All right, welcome everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on your time zone. On behalf of the IRIS Center, I'm excited to welcome you to today's prep talk. This is our second session that we've designed just for college and university teacher education faculty. My name is Jordan Lukens. I work with the IRIS Center, and I'm also an assistant teaching professor at North Carolina State University. Today, we are so excited to be partnering with two of our fellow OSEP funded centers, the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials, and also with Bookshare. So Cynthia and Laura are going to connect us today with some really excellent resources that you can use to plug right into your courses to help your students be well prepared for finding and creating and using accessible formats. A couple of housekeeping items before I turn it over to them. As far as the agenda, Cynthia Curry is going to share some AIM resources with us for about 10 minutes and then hand it over to Laura Ronberg from Bookshare for another 10 minutes or so it'll be pretty quick. Then we have some time set aside for questions and discussion. By about 1:40 p.m. my time, Eastern time, we're going to be wrapping up and sharing some final information, but we're going to keep the Zoom open for another 30 minutes or so for anyone who wants to stick around and continue the conversation and get some questions answered. We are recording the session to share with those who were unable to attend live. Our first prep talk with the Progress Center on IEP development is up on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out if you haven't seen it yet. If you didn't make it to our first session, it is there. And we'll also get today's recording posted as quickly as we can as well. And that will just be the recording of the presentation, not the group discussion afterwards. So we want you to feel free to share freely and openly. So without any further delay, we've got a quick time together this afternoon. So I will turn it right over to Cynthia Curry from the AIM Center.
Great, thank you, Jordan. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation. I'll jump right over to my slide deck to start going, but it looks like maybe I'm sharing the wrong screen. Am I sharing my slide deck?
I am not seeing slides. I just see Cynthia Curry has started screen sharing. So maybe close out and try again.
It looks like, can you hear me? I'm sorry. It looks like I'm not off to a good start. I'm afraid that I'm frozen.
Oh, no.
Yes, I am. Here we go. All right. That was just a little bit of delay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. I apologize. All right, so it's my pleasure for me to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation, and thanks to Kim for dropping links in the chat. My name is Cynthia Curry. I'm project director for the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials for Learning. We just call ourselves the AIM Center. I do have a background in teacher education. I directed an OSEP project for the University of Southern Maine. It was a 325T on increasing accessibility within teacher ed programs, specifically with UDL and culturally responsive pedagogy, and taught within teacher education as adjunct faculty. So it's really near and dear to my heart, teacher education. We have presenter accessibility promises at CAST in the AIM Center to really help model accessibility and how it can really be built into presentations and documents. So as we're going through this presentation, I'm hoping that you'll see some of these features such as simple backgrounds and high color contrast, our readable fonts, clear structures and layouts, consistent formatting, distinct slide titles, effective use of images, alt text on images. I'm happy to share it. I think actually that Kim shared the slide deck in the chat. You'll see alt text, shortened links with descriptive back halves, and we always check our materials for accessibility. So the three specific resources from the AIM Center that I'll share in the short time is our resources for designing for accessibility so that you can also replicate and model accessibility within the materials you create for your students and teacher candidates, as well as to teach them how to do the same so that they're prepared for accessibility in the classroom. Decision-making and accessible formats, and how to include accessible educational materials in the IEP. Just a few things about the AEM Center so you know what we do beyond just those 3 resources, because we have a lot to offer. And I hope that you'll continue to tap into our website and resources and reach out anytime to us, because our role is as a technical assistance center to build the capacity of SEAs, LEAs, publishers, families, teacher education programs, and others to increase both the use and the availability and the use of accessible materials and technologies for all learners who need them. And we work across the lifespan, so not just K-12, but we provide technical assistance to early childhood programs, higher ed, workforce development as well. We do this across our 3 tiers of TA. So our universal technical assistance is through our website, publications, webinars, online learning modules. We have a podcast that we launched in the fall, and we have a new 4-part video series as well that you'll find on our website to start conversations around accessibility in multiple contexts. We have targeted technical assistance for early childhood, higher ed, and workforce development. And then we provide intensive technical assistance in K-12. So this is through our AIM cohort of 7 states. I have a map here that's displaying the 7 states that we're currently providing intensive TA for, and those are Oregon, Oklahoma, Missouri, Georgia, North Carolina, West Virginia, and New Hampshire. And in our 2014 to 2019 AIM Center, we provided intensive TA to 8 states, and those were Alaska, Texas, Minnesota, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, Florida, and Maryland. And with these states, we're building capacity for coordinated systems to make sure from early childhood through post-secondary students, individuals, children who need accessible materials as they're transitioning across the lifespan, have them in a timely manner and with high quality. So jumping into those resources that I mentioned I'd feature in this short time, the first one being our resources around designing for accessible materials. And we use the POUR model in these resources. And POUR stands for Perceivable, Operable, Understandable, and Robust. And the image on the screen that I'm showing was designed by our designers at CAST, and really shows how across various contexts, materials, and technologies, we can build in different ways for learner variability to be able to interact with these. So whether it's Braille, whether it's color contrast on a tablet, whether it is closed captioning as part of a video, whether it's alt text that's built into digital images, we can make sure that learner variability is addressed across all these materials and technologies, regardless of format. So perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust are the 4 principles that we use. So we have designing for accessible documents. So what are some of the considerations to make sure that whether a student has a learning disability, blind, low vision, whether students have physical disabilities, deaf, hard of hearing, how can we make sure that all the components, elements, and structures in the documents that we create or slide decks are going to be accessible for them? Accessible video, so this would include both closed captioning and audio description. And math, we have guidance on our website. So if you have math teachers, content areas in STEM, making sure that math notation and other ways that math is conveyed is going to be accessible. Our decision-making and accessible formats resource helps guide the process for determining whether a learner needs accessible materials and accessible formats, how the team can match the student to that format, whether it's going to be Braille, digital text, a large print, audio, do they need tactile graphics, from where those materials can be acquired in accessible formats, and then what are the best practices for teachers, students, and families to help support students to use that format and those materials across the curriculum. And then accessible educational materials in the IEP. This is all been updated to reflect recent changes in copyright that were a result of the Marrakesh Treaty Implementation Act. So student eligibility, who can certify student as needing accessible formats, digital instructional materials, because the NIMAC can now accept digital instructional materials from publishers should states and districts require them to do so. So within that IEP, where multiple places where accessible educational materials can be included, along with assistive technology. And then want to make sure that everybody's aware of our AIM Cafe. So this is the first Thursday of every month. Teacher candidates absolutely are welcome. We'd love to see more teacher candidates as well as teacher educators at the monthly cafe. There's a different topic every month. It's not recorded. It's very informal. We call our technical assistant specialists baristas because that's really, they serve up a different topic around accessible materials every month. So you just register once, it's on your calendar, and join when you can. And staying connected, you can please follow us on Twitter, on Facebook. A good way to reach us, I'll also drop my email in the chat, but aem.cast.org is our website, and you can always send us an email at aem@cast.org. So thank you very much. I probably went too fast, but I just wanted to make sure that I stayed within the parameters. I hope everybody obviously stays for conversation and really take some time to explore our website and to reach out anytime how we can support you and your teacher candidates.
Thank you, Cynthia. We'll go ahead and toss it over to Laura to share a little bit more about one specific way that you can help your teacher candidates use accessible educational materials through Bookshare.
Great, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So my name is Laura and I'm with Bookshare. And Bookshare is one example of a repository where educators can have easy access to accessible materials. So Cynthia provided a great overview of all the resources of how you make materials accessible. At least 5% of students do experience a reading barrier. So reading printed books is not easy for them. They need their content in accessible formats. We found during the pandemic, a lot of schools and districts went to different digital curriculums, but just because something is digital does not mean it is going to be accessible. And many of these students who have reading barriers, who require accessible formats, are in the general education classroom. So the accessible materials are really kind of no longer, it's not just a special education issue. So this is where Bookshare comes in. Bookshare is the world's largest online library of accessible materials. Every book in the collection can be downloaded in a variety of formats, including audio with the synchronized highlighted text, Braille formats, other electronic publishing formats, EPUBs, DAISY files, which are compatible with many assistive technology devices that students might need, or it can be downloaded as a Word document. And no matter how a book is accessed, they all can be customized to meet the learner's needs, whether that's increasing the font, changing the contrast, having the synchronized text to speech, slower, faster, different type voices. Everything can be customized in a variety of ways. And the books can be read on computers, Chromebooks, mobile devices, Braille readers. They can be printed out as embossed Braille, and also they're compatible with many other specialized assistive technology devices. There are over 1 million titles in the Bookshare collection. It's textbooks, fiction, nonfiction, pretty much anything a student would need for school or to read for fun. And books are available for pre-K, K-12, post-secondary, along with all the popular books. We have all the New York Times bestsellers, the award winners. So the books really span from pre-K and on. And we have a large collection of books for adults as well, who might be in vocational or adult education programs. And best of all, Bookshare is free for all qualified students, thanks to our funding from the Department of Ed, Office of Special Education Programs. I'll go into a little more about the qualifications, but again, it is free for students of any age. We offer 2 account types. An individual membership would be something that an adult or a parent might sign their child up for. They can search our collection and read any book that they wish. schools and educators or maybe school districts would sign up for an organizational account. They add their qualified members, and then those educators find and assign the books to them. So when new teachers, when they start teaching and they go into a school or a school district, their school might already be using Bookshare. Oftentimes, the VI department or the assistive technology department might have set up an account for district-wide use. In other districts, it's school by school. So they might want to inquire to find out if there already is an account. If not, it's really easy for an educator to create an account. Just go to our website, www.bookshare.org, and there walk through the process of signing up and then adding their qualified students. So again, Bookshare is only available for students who qualify, and it operates under copyright law. So it's not special education law, but there's a provision in the copyright law that says if a person is blind or has a visual impairment or a perceptual or reading disability or a physical disability that prevents them from interacting with a traditional printed book in a way that a person without such impairment would interact with, then they are available to receive accessible formats of materials that publishers publish. So basically, if someone cannot pick up a book, hold it in their hands, turn the pages, see the words on the page, or decode the words on the page, that would be a good indication that they would qualify for Bookshare. And the qualifying process, which the law also talks about, is someone with professional expertise in working with someone that has one of these conditions. So that can be the special education teacher, assistive technology professional, an ophthalmologist, a family doctor, a school psychologist, anyone who has evaluated the student, interacted with them, knows that they have this condition. They simply add the student to their membership roster, check a box saying that they attest to that the student meets that need. So oftentimes students will have an IEP that mentions the need for accessible formats or reading accommodations, such as text-to-speech, or maybe even name Bookshare or ebooks outright. And again, this is really where it's really important that the IEPs are specific and mention these items, so then the students can get Bookshare. But it's a very simple process to get the account going and assign the students. So that's kind of the very brief overview of Bookshare. We're in the breakout rooms. I'm happy to demo the website and show some ways that the books are read. But again, all the books, the 1 million titles can all be read on mobile devices, tablets, computers. It's very easy. There's a lot of free reading tools, including one that the AEM Center has developed that integrates with Bookshare. So a lot of options, a lot of different ways to customize the text. But the main thing is these students are having access for free to all the texts that they need for school and anything they would want to read for fun, because the more they read, the better they will increase their reading comprehension. And we are constantly adding titles to our collection. I believe it's something like a couple thousand a month, and that's through our partnerships with publishers around the world. The books are also available in a variety of languages. And so we're constantly increasing and enhancing our access. And I'll go ahead and stop there.
Thanks, Laura. I did want to go ahead while we're all in the group, and we have a couple of minutes, 2 questions that popped up in the chat while you were sharing. How about higher ed joining Bookshare? What would that process look like?
Yeah, that would be the same. And oftentimes students who need an accommodation such as Bookshare have been using it in K-12. And hopefully their educators have set them up where they have their own individual membership that's now separate from their school account. So they go into higher ed, and if they're experienced and familiar using it, hopefully they've been using it and have been getting their materials that they need. They would just go, they get their class reading list. They would go online and search for what they need and take care of that. But many higher ed institutions do create their own organization account. It's often maybe through the DS office, or maybe an educator might do it just might have 1 or 2 students. But with those organization accounts, which they certainly can create, the students can only read the books that the educator has gone online, found the book, and manually assigned to them. So that does put a little bit of more of a burden on the educator, but there are some cases where a student might need that assistance. But so definitely we have a range of higher ed textbooks, and we've been really working in the last few years of getting more and more of those in there. So if you have a student who themselves require their materials in accessible format, they can certainly either be encouraged to create their own account. If they're over 18, they just sign up for their own account, or the school can set up the account and add the student.
Excellent, thank you. Another one that was asked was about ADHD, and I think kind of thinking more broadly, is there any specific disability categories that are being looked for, or is it more, can you just make that case for ADHD impacting working memory, contributing to reading difficulties? What would that be like?
Yeah, that comes up a lot. So again, the law states that it has to be a visual or a learning or reading disability or a physical disability. But again, when students are evaluated, it might be, a case could be made by a professional who has expertise in this area, that they have some reading barriers occurring, that the audio version of books or the text to speech would help them access their grade level content. So again, we provide the guidance of what's in the law, and then we leave it up to the professionals who have the familiarity with the student to make that decision based on their best information of what they have. So sometimes it's not always so cut and dry, but again, we leave that up to the educators to make a good faith decision on that.
Great, thank you, Laura. There's a couple more questions that have popped up. I want to make sure that we stay on track with our agenda. We're definitely going to have plenty of time to get to questions and to pick Cynthia and Laura's brains for sure. And I might answer a little bit of Michael's question here in the chat. We are going to go ahead and Kim, if you would drop the link for the handout into the chat. So we covered a lot of resources here. Yes, there will be a recording available on our YouTube channel. And this handout that is showing up in the chat right now has all of these resources from both AIM and from Bookshare, so that you can play around, check things out, see what's on both of their websites. There are also a couple of IRIS resources that are linked. So there's an activity focused on how to make presentation accommodations. There's a module on universal design for learning that ties in really nicely with accessible educational materials. And then we do have a module on the IRIS website that walks you through the Bookshare platform. So there was a question about kind of a sandbox and being able to see what this looks like and experience kind of what Bookshare would be like as a faculty member you may not have access to it for an individual student. But that module will really take you through the platform so that you can see what that would look like on a teacher's end as well. So that handout is a nice sort of summary of all the resources that we've been through so far today that we hope will support your instruction, that you can use to send your teacher candidates out with user-friendly resources that they can take beyond your classes and use as they enter their classrooms as well. Before we open up for some discussion with the whole group, we do want to give you all an opportunity to quickly and briefly connect with a few other faculty members and think about these resources together. So we're going to do a quick breakout room activity. Don't be afraid. Don't run off on me. We're just going to do about 4 minutes in breakout rooms with about 5 or so a piece in those rooms. And just want you to quickly share an idea that you have for how you might use these resources that Cynthia and Laura just shared with us. So what course do you see this fitting into maybe? Or is there an assignment that you see this really linking up nicely with, or an experience? Just a few minutes to get your wheels turning before we all come back together and have a chance to discuss as a group and get a few more questions answered.